Every 40 seconds, someone in this country has a stroke. Read that again, 40 seconds. That's about how long it took you to watch this video start playing. And here's what most people don't know. Nearly all of those strokes share a handful of warning signs and risk factors that show up years, sometimes decades, before the actual event happens. The scary part isn't the stroke itself. The scary part is how many people never saw it coming, because nobody ever sat them down and explained, clearly and simply, what actually increases the risk and what they could have done differently. Today I'm going to change that for you. I'm going to walk you through 5 things, 5 simple, doable things that may lower your risk of stroke, especially if you're over 60. Nothing extreme, nothing that requires a gym membership or a complete life overhaul. Just clear, honest, doctor-to-patient information, the kind I wish more people had before they ended up in my emergency room. So stay with me until the end, because point number 1 on this list is something almost nobody thinks about, and it might be the most important one of all. Hello, and thank you for being here. I'm Dr. Richard Williamson. I've spent more than 20 years working in emergency medicine. And if there's one thing that emergency room work teaches you, fast, it's what a stroke actually looks like, in real time, in real families, in real living rooms. I've knelt beside patients on kitchen floors. I've held the hands of husbands and wives who didn't know if their partner would recognize them when they woke up. I've seen strokes that were mild, resolved within days. And I've seen strokes that changed a person's life and their family's life permanently in a matter of minutes. I'm not telling you this to frighten you. I promise you, that is not my goal today. I'm telling you this because I've also seen the other side. I've seen patients who made small, steady changes in their 60s and 70s and who are still walking, still talking, still laughing with their grandchildren today. Years and years later, prevention works. Not perfectly and not with guarantees. Medicine never deals in guarantees, but it works meaningfully. And it works more than most people realize. Everything I share with you today comes from general medical knowledge and clinical experience. It's meant to inform you, not to replace a proper conversation with your own doctor, who knows your personal health history far better than I ever could through a video. Please, keep that in mind as we go through this together. Let's begin. Number 5 on our list, and I promise you, this one surprises almost everyone I mention it to. Number 5 is untreated or undertreated high blood pressure, and specifically, not checking it often enough. Here's the simple truth. High blood pressure is, by a wide margin, one of the most significant risk factors for stroke. And it earned a nickname in medicine. Doctors sometimes call it the silent killer, because most people who have it feel completely fine. No headache, no dizziness, no warning sensation at all. You can have blood pressure high enough to be damaging your blood vessels right now, today, and feel perfectly normal. Let me explain what's actually happening inside your body in the simplest way I can. Your blood vessels are like garden hoses, flexible, a little bit elastic, designed to handle a certain amount of pressure as blood moves through them. When blood pressure stays elevated over months and years, it's like running that hose at too high a pressure. Constantly. Over time, the walls of the vessels can become damaged, stiffer, more prone to small tears, or to developing weak spots. And in the brain specifically, this damage can contribute to either a blood vessel becoming blocked, which is called an ischemic stroke, or a blood vessel rupturing, which is called a hemorrhagic stroke. High blood pressure is associated with both types. I want to tell you about a patient I treated a few years ago. I'll call him Thomas. 66 years old, retired mechanic, genuinely one of the healthiest seeming men his age that I'd met that year. Ate reasonably well, walked his dog every single morning, hadn't been to a doctor in almost 4 years because, in his words, "I feel fine, why would I need to go?" One afternoon, Thomas was in his garage, working on a small woodworking project, and suddenly, the left side of his face began to droop. His speech slurred. His wife, thankfully, recognized it immediately and called for emergency help right away. Thomas survived his stroke. He was fortunate, genuinely fortunate, that his wife acted so quickly, because time is everything with stroke care. But when we checked his blood pressure in the emergency room, it was significantly elevated. And when we spoke with him afterward, it became clear he likely had been living with high blood pressure for years, undiagnosed, simply because he hadn't been checked. This is why I say this so often to my patients. And I'll say it to you now. You cannot feel high blood pressure. You have to measure it. The good news, and there is very real good news here, is that checking your blood pressure is remarkably simple. You can buy a home blood pressure monitor at almost any pharmacy, and most are quite affordable now. Many pharmacies will even check it for you, for free, if you simply ask. I'd recommend checking it at least once a week if you've never had issues before, and more often, sometimes daily, if you or your doctor have any concerns. And if you get a reading that seems high, please don't panic. One high reading doesn't mean disaster. Blood pressure naturally fluctuates throughout the day. But a pattern of high readings is worth a conversation with your doctor, and it's worth having that conversation sooner rather than later. Thomas, I'm glad to say, is doing well now. He takes a simple daily medication, checks his blood pressure regularly, and has become rather proudly the person in his friend group who reminds everyone else to get theirs checked too. Knowing your numbers, that's the whole point of this one. It costs almost nothing, takes only a couple of minutes, and it may be one of the most powerful things you do all year for your brain's health. Now let's move to number 4, because this one involves something most of us do every single day without thinking twice about it, and it has a surprisingly direct connection to stroke risk. Number 4 is not managing your blood sugar, particularly for those with prediabetes or diabetes that goes unchecked. I know, diabetes and stroke might not seem obviously connected at first glance. Let me explain the link simply. When blood sugar remains elevated over a long period of time, it can gradually damage the inner lining of your blood vessels, including the smaller vessels that supply blood to your brain. This damage can make those vessels more prone to narrowing or to developing blockages. High blood sugar is also frequently linked with other risk factors we're discussing today, like high blood pressure and unhealthy cholesterol levels, so these issues tend to travel together, compounding each other's effects. Let me share a story with you. A patient named Diane, 61 years old, came into our emergency department after what her family initially thought was simply a case of confusion and fatigue. It turned out to be a smaller stroke, what we sometimes call a mini stroke, or more formally, a transient ischemic attack. When we ran her blood work, her blood sugar levels were quite elevated, and it became clear she had been living with undiagnosed type 2 diabetes for some time. She told me, honestly, that she'd noticed some symptoms over the past year or so. More thirst than usual, more frequent trips to the bathroom, some fatigue, but she'd simply attributed it all to getting older and hadn't thought much of it. This is so common, more common than people realize. Many of the early signs of blood sugar issues get quietly dismissed as normal aging. Diane's story, thankfully, had a positive turn. Her mini stroke resolved with only mild temporary symptoms, and working closely with her doctor, she made changes to her diet, incorporated regular walking into her routine, and began appropriate treatment for her diabetes. Her blood sugar levels came down into a healthier range over the following months. She told me something I still think about. She said, "I wish someone had told me years ago that feeling tired all the time wasn't just part of getting older." So here's my gentle advice to you today. If you haven't had your blood sugar checked in the last year, especially if you're over 60, please consider asking your doctor for a simple blood test. It's a quick routine test, often done alongside other blood work you may already be getting. And if you already know you have diabetes or prediabetes, please know this isn't a life sentence of restriction and fear. Managing blood sugar well is absolutely achievable through a combination of diet, activity, and when needed, medication. Many people I've cared for over the years have brought their blood sugar into a healthier range and maintained that for years afterward. Small changes matter here too. Reducing sugary drinks, adding a short walk after meals, even just 10 minutes can help your body process blood sugar more effectively. Choosing whole grains over refined ones when possible. None of this requires perfection. It requires awareness and consistency. Now let's talk about something that might feel a little more personal, because it involves choices we make every single day, often without even realizing we're making them. Number 3 is a lack of regular physical movement. And this one deserves some real clarification, because I don't want you to misunderstand what I mean. When most people hear exercise, they imagine something intense, running, heavy weights, hour-long gym sessions, and for many adults over 60, especially those managing joint pain or other health conditions, that image feels not just unappealing, but genuinely unrealistic. So let me be very clear. That is not what I'm talking about. What research consistently shows is that regular, moderate movement, even something as simple as brisk walking for 20 to 30 minutes most days, is associated with a meaningfully lower risk of stroke. Not because of dramatic fitness transformations, but because movement supports healthy blood pressure, helps maintain healthier blood vessels, supports better blood sugar regulation, and helps manage weight, all factors that connect back to stroke risk in different ways. Let me tell you about a patient named Harold, 73 years old, who had lived what most people would call a fairly sedentary lifestyle since retiring. He'd worked a desk job his whole career, and after retirement, his days largely consisted of sitting, watching television, reading, comfortable activities, but not much movement. Harold came to see me after experiencing some concerning dizzy spells, and thankfully, they turned out not to be stroke-related. But during our conversation, we talked at length about his overall risk factors, and it became clear that lack of regular movement was a significant piece of the puzzle for him. I didn't ask Harold to start running marathons. That wouldn't have been realistic or necessary. Instead, we talked about starting small. A 10-minute walk around his block after breakfast. That was it initially. Over the following months, Harold gradually built up to walking for about 25 minutes most days, sometimes with his wife, sometimes with a neighbor he'd befriended along the way. He told me, with real pride, that it had become one of the favorite parts of his day. Not a chore, but something he genuinely looked forward to. When we checked his blood pressure and other markers about 6 months later, there were meaningful improvements. And beyond the numbers, he told me he simply felt better, more energy, better sleep, and improved mood. I want to reassure you, if mobility is a challenge for you due to joint pain, balance concerns, or other health issues, please don't feel discouraged. Movement comes in many forms. Gentle stretching, chair exercises, water-based exercise, which is often wonderfully gentle on the joints. Even standing up and moving around your home every hour or so if longer walks aren't currently possible for you. The goal isn't intensity, the goal is consistency and finding movement that fits your body, your life, and your circumstances. If you're unsure what kind of movement is safe and appropriate for you specifically, this is absolutely a wonderful conversation to have with your doctor. They can help guide you towards something that fits your unique health picture. Now here's something that connects closely to everything we've discussed so far, but it involves a choice that many people don't realize carries such significant weight when it comes to stroke risk. Number 2 is smoking. And if you don't smoke, please don't skip ahead because I promise you, this section has something valuable for you too, particularly if someone in your life still does. I want to be honest and direct here, because the evidence on this is remarkably clear. Smoking is one of the most significant, modifiable risk factors for stroke that exists. Modifiable meaning, unlike your age or family history, this is something within your control to change. Here's the simplified science. Smoking damages the lining of your blood vessels throughout your entire body, including those supplying your brain. It contributes to the buildup of fatty deposits inside artery walls, a process called atherosclerosis, which can narrow these vessels over time. Smoking also makes your blood more prone to clotting, and it raises blood pressure, at least temporarily, with every single cigarette. All of these factors compound stroke risk substantially. I remember a patient, Patricia, 68 years old, who had smoked since she was a teenager, more than 50 years by the time I met her. She came into our emergency department with sudden weakness on her right side and difficulty forming words clearly. Patricia's stroke was significant, and her recovery, while she did make real progress over time with dedicated rehabilitation, was a long and difficult road. I remember her telling me, with tears in her eyes during one of her follow-up visits, "I always thought I'd quit eventually. I just thought I had more time." I share this story not to shame anyone who smokes, and I want to be very clear about that. Nicotine addiction is powerful, and quitting is genuinely difficult. I understand that completely, and I have deep respect for how hard that struggle can be. But I also want you to know sincerely that it is never too late to see benefits from quitting at any age. Research shows that stroke risk begins decreasing relatively soon after quitting smoking and continues to decrease over the following years. Your body has a remarkable capacity to begin healing once that ongoing damage stops. If you currently smoke and you're considering quitting, please know there is real support available. nicotine replacement options, prescription medications that can ease cravings, support groups, and your doctor can help guide you toward the approach most likely to work for your specific situation. Quitting isn't about willpower alone, it's about finding the right support and the right strategy for you. And if you don't smoke, but someone you love does, perhaps the most caring thing you can do is have a gentle, non-judgmental conversation with them and let them know you support them whenever they feel ready to take that step. Now we've arrived at the final point on our list today, and this one, in my experience over 20 years in the emergency room, might be the single most important piece of knowledge I can share with you. Number one is not knowing the warning signs of a stroke and not acting quickly enough when they appear. I want you to understand something clearly. Even with the healthiest lifestyle, even having addressed every single risk factor we've discussed today, stroke can still occur. It's not always preventable entirely, and I never want to suggest to anyone that they could have controlled every outcome. That simply isn't true, and I wouldn't want you to carry that kind of unfair burden. But what is absolutely within your control is knowing the warning signs and acting on them immediately, without hesitation, without waiting to see if it gets better. Here's why this matters so profoundly. When a stroke occurs, brain cells begin to be affected within minutes due to disrupted blood flow. There's a saying in medicine, time is brain, meaning the faster appropriate treatment begins, the more brain function can potentially be preserved. Every minute that passes without treatment can matter. Let me teach you something simple, something you can remember easily, and something that could genuinely save a life, maybe even your own or someone you love. It's called FAST. F stands for face. Ask the person to smile. Does one side of their face droop or appear uneven? A stands for arms. Ask them to raise both arms. Does one arm drift downward or feel weak compared to the other? S stands for speech. Ask them to repeat a simple sentence. Is their speech slurred, strange, or difficult to understand? T stands for time. If you notice any of these signs, even briefly, even if they seem to improve, call emergency services immediately. Note the time symptoms began. This information helps medical teams enormously. I cannot stress this enough. Do not wait. Do not decide to watch and see. Do not drive the person yourself if emergency services are available in your area. Call for help, because emergency medical teams can begin certain assessments and treatments on the way to the hospital. Let me tell you about a woman named Sylvia who called us after noticing her husband's speech suddenly sounded strange during breakfast. She told me later she almost dismissed it, thought maybe he was simply tired or joking around, but something told her it wasn't right, and she remembered hearing about FAST from a health seminar at her community center months earlier. She called for help immediately. Her husband was having a stroke, and because treatment began so quickly, his recovery was remarkably good, far better than it might have been with even a short delay. Sylvia told me afterward, "I almost talked myself out of calling. I'm so glad I didn't." This is exactly why I wanted this point to be number one on our list today, because knowledge, quick recognition, and immediate action can genuinely make the difference between a full recovery and a permanent, life-altering outcome. Please take a moment right now, if you can, to share this fast information with someone you love. Write it down. Say it out loud to your spouse, your children, your neighbor. This is the kind of knowledge worth passing along because you truly never know when it might matter most. So let's bring everything together now, because I know we've covered quite a lot today, and I want to make sure it feels clear and manageable rather than overwhelming. We talked about knowing your blood pressure numbers and checking them regularly, since high blood pressure often shows no symptoms at all. We talked about understanding your blood sugar levels and recognizing that fatigue and other subtle symptoms aren't always just normal aging. We talked about the real, meaningful value of regular, moderate movement and how it doesn't need to be intense to make a genuine difference. We talked about smoking, honestly and without judgment, and the real benefits that come from quitting at any age. And finally, we talked about FAST, the simple way to recognize stroke symptoms quickly and why acting immediately matters so profoundly. I want to leave you with this thought. You don't need to tackle all 5 of these today or even this week. That would be a lot to ask of anyone. Instead, I'd invite you to choose just one. Maybe it's finally buying that home blood pressure monitor you've been thinking about. Maybe it's scheduling that overdue blood sugar test. Maybe it's committing to a 10-minute walk tomorrow morning. Maybe it's having an honest conversation with your doctor about quitting smoking. Or maybe, simply, it's teaching the fast warning signs to your spouse or your children this evening. Whatever you choose, let it be one small, doable step. That's genuinely how meaningful change happens, not through dramatic overhauls, but through small, consistent choices, repeated with care over time. I also want to remind you, sincerely, that everything shared in this video comes from general medical knowledge and clinical experience, and it's intended to inform and support you, not to replace personalized medical guidance from your own doctor, who understands your specific health history far better than I possibly could through a screen. If anything discussed today resonated with your own situation, please bring it up with them directly. That conversation could be genuinely valuable and possibly life-changing. If this video gave you something useful today, even just one small idea you're going to act on, it would truly mean a lot to me if you'd give it a like. It helps this information reach more people who deserve clear, honest, compassionate health guidance. And if you'd like more videos like this one, straightforward, medically grounded, and made specifically with adults over 60 in mind, please consider subscribing. I create this content because I genuinely believe you deserve better, clearer health information delivered with warmth, respect, and honesty. I'd also love to hear from you in the comments below. Did you already know the fast warning signs before today? Or is there a habit from this list you're planning to start tomorrow? Sharing your thoughts helps other viewers too, more than you might realize. And this community grows stronger every time someone shares their own experience. Take care of yourself this week. Check those numbers, take that walk, have that conversation, and I'll see you again very soon, right here. Until then, I'm Dr. Richard Williamson, wishing you good health and a calm, steady heart.